Well, welcome everyone to Steve Savant's Money, the name of the game. I'm your host, Steve Savant, syndicated financial columnist and money color commentator. On today's show, key elements of retirement. Part 1 in our series on how to make your retirement golden with nationally recognized retirement expert, author, and adjunct professor of the American College, Curtis Cloke. Welcome to the show, Curtis.
Well, thank you, Steve. It's good to be here.
Curtis, not only is it good to have you here, you're one of the top authorities in the United States on retirement. And I looked at your first slide here about what's happening in the United States. But before we get into that, tell me about this bridge. I mean, who builds a bridge to nowhere? No one.
Well, this bridge is a bridge in Honduras. And at one time there were roads, obviously, that led to that bridge. And at one time there was a river that ran underneath of that bridge. But a hurricane came through 3 years after this bridge was built. And it moved an entire river. Of course, it took out the roads that were involved in that bridge as well. And it rendered that bridge useless.
So are you saying this picture is a picture of retirement paradigm? Are things shifting like that?
So what we're saying here is if we continue to do things for retirement as we've always done, we're going to render those tools, those methods, those methodologies, those beliefs, we're going to render them as useless as this bridge, because just like the hurricane came and changed an entire river, so are the elements that we're facing in America and other societies that say we can't continue to do for retirement planning the things that we've always done, or we're going to be sitting on that bridge an island to ourselves.
Now you say here, I notice here, you say that there are some serious underfunded areas in the United States government. Top of your list, Medicare.
Yeah, so Medicare in the next 75 years, according to government estimates, will be underfunded by $38 trillion plus in 75 years. We've got a big problem, much bigger problem with Medicare than we do with Social Security.
What about this issue about pensions? How underfunded are American corporate pensions in the United States right now?
Well, first of all, let's talk about the fact that very few pensions even still exist. They're being contributed. So less than 10% of the companies in America today have pensions, when a long time ago, 90% of the companies had pensions. But here's a big problem. The funding levels of these pensions are an issue, and the reason for that is because people are living much longer than we thought. And so the actuarial studies of these funded economics and then lower interest rates to boot have caused these funds to be underfunded. Now, just give you an example, state pensions, U.S. state pensions, if you're a state employee, are underfunded by more than $1 trillion. Federal traditional pensions with corporations have a federal state pension protection, basically protects the economic value of a pension up to $1 million. State pensions are not covered by that federal protection program. And so having state pensions underfunded by that amount of money is a real threat to the retiree who's been counting on being able to get to 80, 85 and live longer and expect that their payments on those pensions won't go down. Well, guess what? That may not be so.
Well, when I'm looking at the way pensions are today, we haven't even factored in the new longevity revolution in our culture. How is that going to impact pensions, regular defined contribution plans? How's that going to hit America in retirement?
Well, this is exactly the Achilles heel of this problem of rendering this bridge useless metaphorically, and we can't continue to do things for retirement the way that we've always done. And that is that people are living longer. So let's talk about this statistic. This is the new 2012 mortality table that was released back in 2014. Now, what's really interesting about this data is that the last time mortality was updated was in 2000. If we look at the difference between men and women who've achieved age 65 in the U.S. and how long men and how long women are living, the average composite increase to men and women who've made it to 65 in America have increased in just 12 years, 2.45 years. And today, in 2012 mortality tables, based on the Society of Actuaries, the average life expectancy of every man in the U.S. who makes it to 65 will live to 86.6, and every woman will live to 88.8. So we know that about 2.45 years is the increase across the board that we've seen in the next 12 years, or the past 12 years. Imagine if that pace were to continue every 12 years into the future. Now, we don't have the picture here, but if I showed you a picture of a front cover of a Time magazine, the article that came out, and the front page of that Time magazine had a picture of a little baby on it, and the heading said, "The baby that will live to 142 has already been born. This generation of children will likely be able to live to age 142 given technology of medical science and the things that are going on in our industry with medical science." So these are the things that are causing people to live longer, which is great. Not only do we have longevity, we have quality increase as well as just longevity, but what's the problem that these things create? Well, when people live longer, they go through greater economic cycles. They go through more hyperinflation periods. They go through more illnesses. They go through more cycles of things that multiply their risk. And when longevity multiplies the risk, pensions aren't figured correctly. Right?
Wow.
Medicare is not figured correctly.
Well, I'm looking at your key elements in the light of the mortality revolution that you just described. So it's serious. Knowing what retirees want. Well, listen, if I thought I knew what I wanted until you said, well, you may need to want that another 10 years. So how do I deal with, I have a desire as a retiree, but in light of my new longevity, are my wants going to match up to my dreams? Are they going to really match up?
Well, let's talk about what retirees want. The first thing that retirees want is they want professional financial advisors that have the skill and capability to actually know what questions to ask. And what retirees want is they want their concerns to be known. They want to know what's in it for them. And finally, they want to have an emotional connection where they feel that they're being heard by the advisors that they select. Too many advisors think they know it all, or they know more than their clientele, which is typically the case. But they're so busy wowing clients with their knowledge and expertise that the process of knowing what retirees want is asking good questions and getting their story. And then it's really identifying what keeps you up at night. What are the fears that you have? And then once you get through what keeps you up at night, what are the risks, longevity being one of them, that absolutely have to be taken off the table? That's what retirees want. So taking risk off the table. And then it's the antidotes. How do we divide and conquer income versus growth and longevity? How do we buy income? We used to have pensions. We were buying income all the time. But today, with pensions being gone, how do we buy income today? How do we get pensions back? And how do we invest this difference for the long-term duration for which we're going to need money and income and assets in which to do it? What are the core measurements to determine safety or failure? People do not want to see long tabular reports and Excel spreadsheets and a whole bunch of numbers. What they want is a singular picture that they can be trained to look at simply and easily, that when they see that picture, they go, based on the gauges on that dashboard, I believe maybe I'll make it. They just want a picture. They want simplicity. And then they also want to find that happy factor. What is the happy factor?
Well, everybody wants to have an enriching lifestyle during retirement. It has a lot to do with these things. One thing before we close out our segment, I want you to just mention about this. I love this because this is exclusive to you. Divide and conquer. Just give me another 30 seconds. What are we talking about when we're talking about divide and conquer?
There's 4 things we want the day of our retirement. We want to preserve our wealth if possible. We'd like to grow it slowly over time, but we need to distribute from it to cover our income, and we need to inflate it, keep pace with inflation. Those are conflicting goals. Let's separate the asset that focuses specifically on efficiency to income, and let's separate that from the dollars that do long-term growth, provide the legacy value and the liquidity that we need. And when we talk about divide and conquer, it's creating 2 camps of both defensive income and offensive equity growth and liquidity. Those are the things that we mean by divide and conquer.
And when you said that, you were exactly right. As soon as you said it, I said, they sound like they're counterintuitive to each other. But you're saying there's ways to make them work in harmony.
Correct. It's dividing the assets into 2 components, and it's dealing with income one way, and the tools that you use for that are completely different than the tools you use to preserve and grow. And too many advisors are out there trying to build singular portfolios with multiple goals that are conflicting with one another, and we lose some efficiencies when that happens.
Well, don't forget to watch our next segment, the Top 5 Fears in Retirement, part 2 of our series on how to make your retirement golden. And keep in mind, before moving forward with any of the ideas on our show, always check with your tax consultant, legal counsel, or financial advisor. You've been watching Steve Savant's Money, the name of the game.